Line B, the first flight of the orbital Discovery, and the shuttle has cleared the tower. Every 4 computers now have primary control of critical vehicles.
Hey, what is up, ladies and gentlemen? It is your boy Johnny, and today we're going to be showing you Projector gaming with the PlayStation 5. And in this video, we're also going to be going over a review of the Projector Optoma UHD50x. To start off the video, we're going to talk about the specifications of the Optoma UHD50x. So the Optoma UHD50x is a 4K capable projector, so you can play anything up to 4K in quality, and it looks really nice. It also has 1080p 120 FPS per second. This is actually not a bad thing for this current generation of consoles for the PS5 and the Xbox Series X. Simply because, believe it or not, these consoles do not even support 120 FPS at 4K resolution in most games, and I doubt that in the future they'll be doing 4K games 120 FPS on the PlayStation 5 unless they get an upgraded Pro model maybe in the future. But it is a good thing that it does support it in 1080p at 120 FPS, because it allows you to play those 1080p games that the PlayStation 5 has in 120 FPS. For example, Ratchet and Clank, the new one that came out, and as well as previous games such as Devil May Cry, the new one, the reboot, which also supports 120 FPS. Basically any game that supports 120 FPS. The projector has 2 HDMI ports. I believe one is HDMI 1.1 and HDMI 2.0, which is more than enough that you could have for the 120 FPS support at 1080p. It also brings a USB power port. Doesn't really bring anything smart device like a OS, so you would have to have your own little hub if you want to have like a cool OS. I'm also going to mention the sound in the projector. How does it sound while I'm gaming or watching a movie? Basically, the sound from the fans, you can barely notice them. In my opinion, if you have loudspeakers, you're not going to notice anything at all. And it's nothing that's like a jet engine in the PlayStation 4, where you used to play the PlayStation 4 and it sounded like a jet engine. I can say that that's not the case here with this Projector Optoma UHD50x. So I'm going to tell you how I have mine set up, so you can probably get an idea how you could possibly set up yours if you're wanting to do something similar to this. I have fiber optic HDMI cables because they are connected to my VZO soundbar, and the reason I recommend you get fiber optic HDMI cables is simply because you're not going to lose any image quality, and you're not going to have like a delay latency when you have a regular HDMI with the copper. So always get a fiber optic HDMI cable for the best performance to use on the projector and while playing your PlayStation 5 games. So the next thing I have is my soundbar system, which is a pretty cheap VCO soundbar system. I'm not gonna say it's expensive. I think it was like $200 or $300 at the time that I bought it, and it basically has 2 rear speakers, a subwoofer, and the soundbar in the front, and it supports Dolby Atmos, and I believe it's a 5.1 system, and it's not bad at all. I think for my needs it's perfect. It supports the Dolby Atmos, and I got it to work with the projector with my NVIDIA Shield, so I think it's a great soundbar if you're looking to actually be a little bit on the economic side of it. My screen setup is pretty basic, believe it or not. I do not have an ALR screen. It's very expensive to get a huge ALR screen, like 150 inches. I think they cost around $1,000, and you know, I'm not about to spend $1,000 on an ALR screen. I think it's ridiculous on the prices that they put on these screens in order to mount to your wall. You can get cheaper ones, but I decided just to go with the drywall on my wall and painted it extra white. Now I do need to do some modifications into this room. I should paint the walls and the ceilings black, because that will allow the image to reflect better onto the extra white wall, and it doesn't have reflections everywhere where it may be distracting on the other walls. Now the projector does produce a pretty good image when the light is turned on, simply because it has a lot of lumens. However, I don't really have a dim control in this room, so I couldn't really dim the lights, but you can still see the image when the lights are turned on. So now I'm going to show you the screen with the lights off. So the image is projected onto the wall and it looks amazing in quality. Believe it or not, if you never gamed on a big screen like this, you're never gonna want to game on a smaller screen again, especially when you're playing storyline games, because it's just a different experience. It just feels better. Even though the image quality is not the best as a television, it's still like a really good experience having a big screen space projected onto your wall with a video game. And the HDR and 4K look pretty amazing in Ratchet and Clank. I personally think it looks really good. However, sometimes in certain games or certain movies, you may have to adjust the HDR settings and put it a little brighter, because sometimes it gets really too dark on the screen. But if you mess around with the settings, you'll eventually be able to fix it to your liking, which is good that this projector has, that you can adjust the HDR to a brighter. That way you can have your own preferences on what you like it. Now, I haven't calibrated the projector or anything. There are different settings online that you can look at. Certain people that they calibrated it with better blacks and stuff like that. Like I mentioned, this projector probably is not going to have the best black levels, but it's still pretty decent for just gaming on video games. So as you guys can see, Ratchet and Clank is projecting, I believe, at 4K 30 FPS, and then you have the performance mode, which I believe it downscales you to 1080p, but it gives you fidelity and 60 FPS as well, which is a pretty good option depending on how you want to game. I also played God of War on here and Final Fantasy 7. God of War looks amazing. Even though it's a PlayStation 4 game, it still looks amazing in this projector. And then as well as Final Fantasy 7 Remake Intergrade, the 4K HDR looks amazing, and with the 60 FPS now included in this game due to the PlayStation 5's power, look amazing. I feel like Final Fantasy is one of the games I really enjoyed on here in this projector, simply because it had so good image quality in certain areas where the colors just pop off a lot. So yeah, I sort of stumbled there, but yeah, the colors are really bright and everything in Final Fantasy 7 Intergrade. I really liked it. So now moving on to the 120 FPS footage. It does look really good, believe it or not. The 120 FPS settings. Now you may have latency in the game. It's not gonna be perfect, but for story games, for the most part, I just leave it with the normal settings. But when you want to play Ratchet and Clank, you can do that enhanced gaming mode for 120 FPS at 1080p. Like I mentioned previously, that for 120 FPS, you really do not need a projector with 4K 120 FPS, because most of the generations of PS5 games, I doubt they're gonna get 4K 120 FPS anytime soon. They might if somebody optimizes it well, maybe an older game, but most of the games, I doubt they'll get 4K 120 FPS. It's just not there with the power, in my opinion, yet. So yeah. In 120 FPS, the latency in Call of Duty, if you enhance game mode, you're gonna get the less latency, the most possible that the projector can give you. And I gotta say, it runs pretty smooth even at 120 FPS frames per second. It really does run smooth. I barely notice any type of latency on the controller. I know that if you're a pro gamer, you're probably used to playing on a monitor, but with the projector, if you're a casual gamer who doesn't really play Call of Duty competitive, you're probably not even gonna notice much. You're probably just gonna game how you always game on your regular television if you're not a pro gamer. So for a casual gamer, I feel like the latency is really fast and everything just loads up. I don't feel like the movements on my controller are slowed down by any means when I have the enhanced gaming mode enabled. Now I want to talk about how the movies look in the projector, and I have to say they actually look pretty decent. They are not that bad, but they aren't the greatest either. It all really depends on the type of movie that you're watching, with whatever filter the director puts, or the colors and images that they put on the screen. Some of them work better with higher colors, and some of them don't really work well with dark level movies. But either way, it does look pretty decent overall. I don't think most people will complain about how the movies look, but if you really want to get a movie projector, you probably are going to buy a movie projector like the Sony 4K projectors. But overall, it's still useful to watch movies, and I think it's pretty cool, especially watching movies on this projector. I haven't really found it the biggest issues, just the black levels sometimes get to me, but you know, I consider to deal with it because still watching the movies on a big screen. The last and final thing that I would mention about this projector, it does indeed have a 3D mode. So if you're into 3D movies, you can actually watch 3D movies, and I have tested it out myself, and it does look pretty cool, but it is a pretty gimmick sometimes when you watch 3D films. Anyways, that pretty much concludes the review of this projector and how you can actually experience next gen gaming on a projector, which I think is the best ultimate setup that you can have. Anyways, thanks for watching this video. Make sure to hit the like button and hit the subscribe button, and leave me a comment in the comment sections on what you think if you're going to get a projector like this in the future. Thanks.